us, and I'll let you take it away.
Okay, great. Thank you for having me, Anna. So I'm hoping that all of you guys have watched the PR 101 webinar that I did a while back, where in that webinar, we kind of discussed an A to Z of the fundamentals of public relations. And in this webinar, which is 201, we're going to delve a little bit deeper into, I guess, the art of pitching journalists, what that means, and the different types of pitches that you can present to journalists to get publicity for your brand. So let's dive in here. On the first slide, this is kind of an overview of what you guys are going to learn. So we're going to review how to locate targeted journalists, the necessary tools, which is kind of a refresher of what we discussed the last time, categories of journalists, because there are different kinds of journalists that you can approach with your story, when to send out a press release and where, when to send out media pitches and where, news story pitches versus article pitches, television segment pitches, radio segment pitches, reality television format pitches, which is a little bit more involved, and we'll get into that, and expert pitches. The importance of an email subject line, because communication is now just so electronic, and pretty much any initial contact that you make with a journalist most likely is going to be via email. So subject lines have become of paramount importance in my industry. And then lastly, journalist pitching etiquette. So identifying targeted journalists. So this one is interesting because I feel that some people sell themselves short in this respect. And the reason why is because, for example, let's say somebody has a book. They might just, if they're sort of a newbie to trying to get public relations for their book, as an example, they may just see that the only avenue for them would be to send out query letters and galley copies of their book, or maybe digital copies of their book, in hopes of getting book reviews. And instead of making kind of a wider scope of who would be considered a targeted journalist. And what I mean by that is, supposing you have a book about a particular way of eating, like a diet book, or, eating lifestyle, I hate the word diet, eating lifestyle book that you have come up with. And so you're only thinking, well, I'm going to send this book to people who review books, and hopefully I can get some reviews under my belt. And while that is true, there are so many other categories that you can do in addition to that. You could also contact journalists who fall under general health and wellness. You could contact journalists who specifically cover food. You could contact journalists who are, currently working on stories and looking for experts about, the newest and best ways of eating to help get fit, lower cholesterol, lower blood sugar, gluten-free, whatever the case may be. You could offer yourself up as an author, as an expert, as somebody who has created a new way of eating. If you're a nutritionist, then you could position yourself as an expert nutritionist. You could also do interesting things like we have one particular food client, for example. They are gluten-free chefs. They have a food line that's in Whole Foods. And we have been arranging for them to go to offices of magazines and actually put out, they have a kind of a traveling hot plate, and they create a fresh meal right there in the editor's office. They give out a live tasting of the food, and while the journalists are tasting the food, they kind of give the backstory and all of the essential information behind the line that they have created. So there's many different ways you can get very, very creative with it, and you don't have to just stick to one lane. So as far as your main news topic and your secondary news topic, very similar in that if we're using the book analogy again, your main topic would be that you are an author who's written a book about a new way of eating that you've discovered that has made you happy, healthy, and fit. The secondary topic might be your own backstory, your human interest story, how you discovered this way of eating because of certain challenges that you have had in the past and the ways that you overcame them. The secondary news topic could be something that's currently going on in the news that has to do with, something having to do with the newest fad diets, and maybe you want to either debunk something that you think is inaccurate, or you want to add something to the fold by explaining how the diet plan that you've created kind of enhances or augments whatever's being discussed in the media. I actually used Linda Fell, who I've been in communication with since the first webinar. I added her as an example, the book series that she did on surviving grief, the Grief Diaries, because I wanted to use her books as kind of an example of the many different media categories that one product or one brand could branch out to. So for example, these are books on surviving different types of grief. So what I categorized for her was literary and book review journalists, journalists who cover death and dying, journalists who cover health and wellness, journalists who cover various psychology topics, human interest and general assignment news. And human interest and general assignment tends to kind of converse. And it's anything that either lends to educating the public, inspiring the public. Anything that would be of human interest would be something that has an emotional component to it. So if your story has an emotional component to it, you would fit under the category of human interest. Okay. And then, of course, being a grief expert for broad news media. So if you're a grief expert and you're somebody who knows how to, get people through the arduous and daunting journey of grief and healing, then anytime something takes place in the news that induces grief, if you have the proper tools that you can offer, then you would be a great expert for people to talk to. Whether it's on television, radio, newspapers, or magazines. Another example would be if somebody is a personal trainer. So their media categories would be physical fitness media, health and wellness media, weight loss media, broad news media, women's interest, men's interest. Men's health and women's health are two very big categories within men's interest and women's interest media. They've become quite popular, and they have a lot of magazine titles, and even major newspapers around the country now have devoted part of their newsroom to hiring a health-related editorial team. I think even the Wall Street Journal and